Today we'll be painting up Stark Sworn Swords from the Song and Ice and Fire miniatures game to celebrate the release of Game of Thrones Season 8. Okay, so starting off with the Stark Sworn Swords, we're going to be painting them up with a gunmetal, and we're going to go over all the chainmail. So all I've done is just, before we've applied this, I've just placed over it a simple black primer to make all the paint adhere to the miniature a lot better. And what I'm going to be doing is just painting up all the chainmail that you can see on this miniature, and we're going to do our plate metal that he has, because he has a bit more plate mail on his shoulder and his head. We're going to be doing that in a different color just to vary it up slightly. It may not be too noticeable, but just giving it a different look like this can really help a lot of details stand out from it being one solid color. Okay, so now that we have that done, we're going to be moving on to our necromancer cloak here, and we're just going to be painting the boots, just keeping it a nice simple color. Now the necromancer cloak is not a straight black, it's a sort of a dark grey, and it's just going to make it nicer than having a straight black on there, because it can be quite a harsh color, straight black. Okay, now that we're finished with that, we're going to be coming up with our plate mail metal here, and we're going to be using that on the other pieces of metal that we didn't paint up with our gunmetal, sorry. So I'm going to be doing the head and the shoulder piece here, and since they're so flat, I'm going to be covering them with 2 layers of paint to give a nicer finish, and it'll hide a lot of those streak marks, which will just end up by having a better result once it's all finished on the table than going one quick pass, and it can actually cause a lot of pooling. Okay, so now that we have our metal done, we're going to be moving on to our main clothing of the miniature, and we're going to be painting it electric blue, because the Stark house color is a palish blue, and I just feel that this one, out of all the blues that I had, gave it the best sort of look, because it's sort of a greyish blue. Maybe a little bit hard to see on camera, it may look like a very bright blue, but it has a bit of a grey colour to it as well, which will be enhancing that when we come to doing the washing. But just going all over here, just going over all the pieces that we can see that we need to paint blue, blocking it out. And so now that we've blocked all that out, we're going to be coming over here and just going over some of our other pieces that you can see, which are the leather straps that are on it. And we're going to be going over it with dirt spatter, because it's a nice dark leather color, which I really like, and I've been using over the whole lot of the Song and Ice and Fire miniatures so far. It's just a nice look for dark leather belts, and it'll really contrast against all the bright colors that we've got so far. Just going in here with a really small detail brush to try and not catch any of the other places that we've got on here. So once we have all that leather work done, we're now going to be painting our Stark Sworn Sword face, and we're going to be using our Army Painter Barbarian Flesh for that. So we're going to start being a little bit careful now, as we don't want our flesh color to end up on our chainmail that we have. And maybe a little bit hard to see here, he's got a big shield in the way. So I'm just being careful, using a smaller brush, just trying to go over it as neatly as I can with a couple of coats. And as you can see here, that we've got a couple of coats on here, it looks a lot nicer. And we're going to be painting up our shield. So the wood part on our shield, we're going to be painting in our leather brown. And I'm also going to start being a lot more careful now when we are doing this, because we're starting to get into the finer detail work, and I don't want to have to cover too many layers of paint on the Stark sigil there on the shield. And just giving it this brown color gives it a nice aged effect once we go over it with a wash. And I'm just being really as neat as I can here to get it in all the cracks. So now we've got all that done, we're going to be moving on to our next step, which is going to be painting the beard, the beard and the facial hair that all these characters have. And we're going to be using our brown hair, just giving them a sort of a neutral colour. You of course here can use any colour you might want to put some red facial hair people, blonde, anything you want. I'm just going to be going with sort of a standard browny orange colour here, which brings out a nice little detail using a small detail brush to do this, because there's not a lot of space, as you can see there. Just trying to get in focus. He does actually have a beard sculpted in. And now once we've done that facial hair detail, I'm going to be coming back here and going around the edge of the shield and our sword with our gunmetal. And now that we've left this till last after the wood, it's just going to make it a lot easier, and we're going to be able to clean up all our wood colour that we've placed on. And the sword as well, you don't forget to do that. Just keeping it nice and neat now, and just giving quick passes over the sword. I'm also going to be doing the sword over a couple of coats, so doing it over a couple of coats really gets rid of that streaky effect. Okay, and now that we've got that done, we can see we've hidden that detail quite nicely, and we're now going to be going over the Stark sigils. Now, he's got one on his shield and one on his chest, and we're going to be doing that in a uniform grey, which is sort of a grey bluish colour, which I think really will go nicely with the Stark symbol, as their colours are quite grey. Like, all the colours seem to be really greyed and washed out. So picking this colour I think is sort of the best, and we're just going over with a fine detail brush, and I'm just hitting the top very lightly, trying not to get that on any of the stuff we've painted before, so it's being very, very careful. Alright, and now with all that detail worked all dried up, we're now going to be coming over with a strong tone, and we're going to be going over all our blue parts that we've painted. With giving it the strong tone, what we're going to be doing is now darkening up that bright blue colour. You may have thought it looked very bright for a House Stark, so I'm just going over there with the strong tone, which is going to really bring it down, and it's also going to pull nicely in all the creases in there, really giving it a really good weathered effect. And then with that done, we're now going to be moving on to our next one, which we're going to be going around all the metal here that we see, and we're going to be doing this with Citadel Agrax Earthshade. And we're going to be doing this all around our wood parts to really deepen the colour and give it a more earthy look. Also just going to be going over the sigil here just a little bit, which isn't going to do too much, it's just going to darken it down. But yeah, just getting it all nice and pulled up so it'll really seep into the cracks of the wood. And don't forget to do the backside of it as well. It'll be quite tricky to get to, but with a small detail brush you should be fine. Okay, now that all that's dry, we're going to be moving on to the next step, which is going to be painting up all our metal pieces. And we're going to be doing this with Citadel Shade Nuln Oil, which I find myself to be a really good shade to have on metal in particular, as it really sort of gives it an aged and weathered look. It sort of looks like metal that's been used a lot. My preference, of course, you may want to use a different shade, but I really like the way that it pulls into the recesses and stuff on metal, and it really just helps dull down some of that shininess. And then once all of that's done, we're going to be moving on to our flesh wash, which we're going to use here, and we're going to just carefully place it all over the face, trying not to get it over any of the metal we've got before, as it'll give it a slightly different colour, but just going over with a nice tiny brush will really help it out, and it'll help pull into the eyes and the nose and stuff, just giving it some good detail on the face once it's all dried. And now we're going to be doing a dry brush. So what you want to do for this is grab shining silver, and we're going to be going over all our metal that we've just done, and we're just going to be giving it quick flick passes at, and what it'll do is it'll bring out the pieces, especially on the chainmail, that catch the light. And from where we've done the nuln oil, it'll just make a big difference from our light to our darks in all those places. And I'm just going over the helmet here, sort of making it look like it's going to be scuffed up and used with different shines and darknesses. And with that all done, you can now see we have completed our miniature, and I've just done it over all the 6 that you can see that you have in the game, which are looking very, very nice. And there's just a nice simple way you can paint up your Stark Sworn Swords. But with that, guys, I'd like to thank you for tuning in on this Game of Thrones season that I'm doing here on the channel, and I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.